Hello and welcome to Autistic Radio, which is sponsored by coldpack.co.uk. When you use coldpack.co.uk as a practitioner to get your cryotherapy products, or as an end user looking for an ice pack here in the UK, we benefit here, and those monies make sure that Autistic Association and Autistic Radio keep the lights on. We've got Spectrum Voices today with Teresa and Ray. Hi Teresa, are you ready to take the microphone?
Hi Jules, thanks very much. Yes, I am. Today's first post is by Autistic Arlo, and we're beginning with an autism poem. Step inside my world and see the magic and wonder that is me. You'll teach me some things, I'll teach you some too. Gestures over words because I have but few. Understanding and empathy is all that I ask, with the many rigid and challenging tasks, like going to bed and staying asleep, because that is when my energy peaks. Naughty, some people would say, when really I'm unique and complex in my own special way. What does everybody think? The poster is by Autistic Arlo, who is run by his mom, Isla Holden. And he looks to be a little boy. I'm not sure if he wrote the poem or his mother did, but I found it beautiful.
Yeah, that came to my mind as well. It immediately made me wonder if the account was an advocate writing a poem on behalf of their son, or an advocate writing or being involved with their son, or an advocate who was just taking something that their son had produced spontaneously and using it to get his voice out there. And then I went into all kinds of thoughts about valuing those things. And I've come to the conclusion, I think, that all of those are lovely and valid, because the words do express something that is true and honest. And I think even those of us who communicate with words can interpret for ourselves some of the frustration in what Arlo is saying there, or the poem includes.
I'm liking the image of the big blanket Arlo's in. It almost at one point looked.
Ray, did you get cut off at the end there?
I would have no idea if I got cut off.
Do you want to try that again just in case? And we can edit.
I was saying that I admire Arlo's big blanket in the image, and how at one point I thought the brownness of it was turning into some form of shiny leather, like he was in a big bear skin.
On that same note, I was looking at the image with what is the blanket, and I thought the shiny part was sort of a saddle on a horse. Moving on to the next post. This one is posted by Fidgets and Fries. And it's a section by the writer Tiffany Hammond. A series of what appears to be slides. The series is "To the Parent I Was Who Tried to Fix Everything." And a quote, "Mama, you can't hold that. It isn't yours." Each one of these says, by Tiffany Hammond, "To the parent I was who tried to fix everything." Society puts its foot on your neck and made you believe that children are problems to solve and not people to know. Why aren't you acknowledging the growth you had? You broke the chain yourself. You thought you had to fix everything because the world told you that everything was broken, including you and your son. These are all slides by the same writer, Tiffany Hammond, and she introduces it as letter number 2 in my parent series, Letters to the Parent I Was. I am just spending time chasing memories, giving honor and praise and forgiveness to the parent I used to be. I think I hit this stage in my life where looking back feels mandatory. And if I ain't got a choice in the matter, I might as well make something out of it. And this appears to be from Tiffany's Substack with the same name, Fidgets and Fries. What do you think?
I think we have something really heartfelt here. We have an autism mum who is using hindsight to give herself both kindness for how she first approached parenting an autistic child, um, also acknowledging some things that she would change, um, and then passing that back to other um, parents of autistic children and supporting them, trying to defend them against some of the negatives that attach to them from society that then comes down to their children. It seems to me that we have something that we need to build, and that's a bridge between the non-autistic and autism mum advocates who work on behalf of their children and the community out there that have built some self-knowledge about their own autism, perhaps people at our end of the scale, this age group, the elder age group. What I identify in this is that this person is recognizing that how they thought about autism needs addressing, and I feel as though autistic people themselves might be one of the resources for them.
I'm kind of noting on screen that this post had a introductory statement, and I don't know if it was actually read, but it says the world will make an actor out of you, have you thinking that motherhood is a performance and repair work is a function of that performance. It was amazing to have this read out because I was reading this earlier today in preparation, and it wasn't meaning much to me. But to hear it read by Teresa tonight, it suddenly kind of hit me, yeah, that sometimes it's good to hear something in someone else's voice.
Right as you read that out, Ray, I was rereading that. I don't remember reading it out loud because I was just marveling at this whole thing. So I don't know what age this mom is, but it seems to be a reflection on, or at least a reflection on an earlier stage in her parenting of her, I'm presuming, autistic child. And some of us have the experience of being both, parenting a neurodivergent child and being a neurodivergent person. Most of us have the experience of, being the parent of a mother. But that's so interesting that at some point, the point she was parenting, that she felt she was on a stage and that motherhood was a performance. And I'm not sure if she means the repair work is a function of that performance, meaning repairing her parenting or repairing her child, or that either one of them needs repairing. But I understand the feeling that you can feel like you're on a stage as a mother. But also, kind of in a meta way, she is on a stage right now because she's got a Substack and a Facebook and some other forms of media, which are good because she's sharing something pretty profound here.
I also love the potted description she has of herself, where she says, there is a story in here somewhere. And also the past tense she uses of speaking to the parent she was.
Yeah, I look at that, the world will make an actor out of you. Have you thinking that motherhood is a performance and that repair work is a function of that performance? I see that as the whole societal pressure, so society's pressure on parents to conform. So the world makes an actor out of you and you're conforming to this unrealistic ideal version of motherhood, parenthood, the whole thing, and it's coming up to a performatory scale on all kinds of levels, and that it's embedded within that repairing children, fixing yourself and fixing children is the main function of what performing and conforming is about. And she's releasing this idea that we should be imposing on our children societal standards as a group, as acting and a performance, and saying that we should actually be nurturing their individuality, and that's a huge step to be moving from one version of, that's a real change in somebody.
I'm getting the sense, having only been introduced to her here, that I'd like to read more. And I think I will. Moving on to the next post. I'm sorry, I can't find it. No, for some reason it isn't. I'm trying to find the robin. Hang on. We might have to edit this part out because I'm... Okay, I found it. Hang on.
Can you
Yes.
see the screen I'm sharing?
I sure can. Okay. The next post is by Sophie James. And in it, there's a picture of a robin on the branch of a tree in the springtime. Am I not autistic because I make eye contact? This is something I was once told by a pastoral teacher in my college, and it really bothered me. Eye contact isn't as simple as people think, and how could she know I wasn't just masking it? It made me think a lot. Some autistic people avoid it completely. Some force themselves to do it. Some have learned to get it right, in quotations, get it right over time. Some can do it themselves, but it still feels uncomfortable. I don't think I've ever thought about eye contact growing up, but I recognize that when I'm speaking to someone, I usually will look away into my own world and be very expressive. I don't really look at anything other than what I'm trying to articulate from my brain. My eyes just kind of dart everywhere whilst I'm speaking. But when I'm listening to someone and I recognize they want to feel heard, I will try to make sure I'm looking. In serious circumstances, like a job interview or a personal moment, I know I'll make eye contact. For me personally, though, I prefer being more active when talking to somebody, going for a walk, or fiddling with something, or having something in particular to focus on. Usually my eyes just go everywhere. I mean, I literally couldn't tell you who makes eye contact or not in my life, so maybe that's a sign. Crying laughy emoji. I don't know how I look at people from their perspective, and if I imagine it, my whole head may be turned away in general conversation. Hands out, speaking loud, and looking somewhere else, making these faces. Breathing emoji with an awe expression, and really smiling, laughing emoji. Sometimes it feels like I'm thinking out loud or speaking with myself, but I know someone's there listening. I know when I should look because it can be important, but it doesn't mean it feels natural or easy. I can make eye contact and still be autistic, just like you can speak, work, socialize, or cope is in quotations. Autism doesn't have one look, and a single moment doesn't define someone's entire experience. If you've ever questioned yourselves because you don't fit the stereotypes, you're not alone. Heart emoji. What does everybody think?
I'm thinking it's quite odd if you... Sorry about this. It's quite odd if you notice yourself avoiding eye contact, because I think to a large extent it may be subconscious. Are we truly aware of it? I do recall when I was getting my diagnosis and I was sitting in an interview, I was asked the question about, do I make eye contact? And I thought I was making eye contact, but apparently I was all over the place. I was staring out the window, I was looking at my feet, I was looking at my fingers. But I don't think that's a confession that, I don't make eye contact. I'm okay in a sense with eye contact, although I do know that it can feel uncomfortable. I think that's a general thing for most people. I was discussing this with a friend last week about, sometimes if you... how do I express this? If you have a potential romantic situation looming, the eye contact can get intense. And if this potential situation could be troublesome for one reason or another, it may be worth your while just not maintaining that eye contact, because in a sense it can actively encourage feelings and other things. But that's just a wee sideline to this general post, which was groovy with all its emojis.
I would say when reading it aloud, first of all, I thought it was really good writing, and it really kind of escalated. Or maybe I was really identifying with it, because it seemed to build steam. And then when it was building a lot of steam, the emojis were like these nice little, I think they were like little eye contact icebreakers or something. And I noticed that the poster, Sophie James, says that she is a neurodivergent woman and mentor navigating life one experience at a time. And I think from this single post that I know of hers, she's doing a good job of it, because I do feel the way she does about eye contact. I am always aware when I'm doing it, not doing it. Anybody who knows me very well knows that I can only think while I'm not looking, and I often only can think while I'm taking notes or scribbling. I think there's this thing for some people that she expressed really well. It might not be the same for everybody, but she really covered the range of this eye contact thing.
It's wonderful that she used an image of a robin, you know, because I've been hearing them sing over the past couple of days, and it's just wonderful.
Well, thanks to Sophie, maybe we'll hear more from her. Shall we move on to the next post?
Yeah, I think this is a tricky one, Teresa.
Yeah, it has a video. Maybe move to the next one. I'm not sure how that would go. Can I suggest going to ADHD Lara? So the next post is by ADHD Lara. It shows two photographs in a backyard with a pile of snow around a very tall evergreen tree. And it says, 20th of March, 10:19 a.m. This is what the first day of spring looks like here, out my front and back door. Oh, and our roof is leaking. Sigh. I'm so over it. We all are. The thing is that as much as this frustrates me, it's low on the, quotes, things I'm losing sleep over list. It's been so interesting to see people's responses and reactions to our city being shut down for days. Many folks are still snowed in. City services are not operating at capacity, etc., etc. A lot of people are talking about how they're seeing community come together to help each other, etc., etc. And while that's true, well, I'd love to see it. What's also true is that this event has shone a big old spotlight on privilege. Some have the mobility and the means to navigate snow removal, getting to work, etc. Some don't. Some can't afford someone to come plow their driveway or shovel their walk if they can't do it themselves. Some don't have the means to take a cab to work or for groceries or to necessary medical appointments because buses aren't fully operational. Some don't have the support systems to lean on. Some are terrified of missing work for even a day for fear of repercussions or of not being able to pay bills. Some, like city plow operators, are having to work around the clock with little thanks. Some have had the tents and makeshift shelters they call home decimated by the weight of the snow. People are frustrated and worried and worn out and dysregulated, and you can't blame them. So as much as it's great to see people pulling together, it's not all rainbows and kumbaya. I think we need to be mindful of that now more than ever. It's easy to see things through a positive lens when you have the privilege of doing so. Not everyone does. What does everyone think?
I'm taken with the empathy of that post, the fact that the poster's thinking about others who would be suffering from these conditions and situations. Romantic though they can be at times, photographs, yeah, but the real experience of, if you think about it, your connection with society, your interrelationships with the supply networks, to function as a human being in an urban environment, say, or even a rural, these things are high pressure. And this post really reiterates a rounded perspective on all this.
As I was reading it, and because I'm in Canada, I couldn't help wonder where she was. I knew it wasn't exactly where I am, but I suspected that it was in northern Ontario or northern Michigan. I went and tried to find out in the About page for ADHD Lara, but I couldn't find it in the short term. But I don't think it's essential to know. I think your point, Ray, is a very good one about her empathy.
I think there's an interesting point about privilege that's happening at the moment in the world with the oil price increase. In my little privileged place in the Scottish borders here, the local fuel price has gone up maybe 10%. But in parts of the global majority south, people's ability to get LPG for their cooking stove or diesel to run a generator has changed their lives dramatically. We're looking at 200% increases or shortages and different governments putting in rationing. There's an enormous privilege that we all experience because of where we are in the world. Essentially, though, we are here to talk about autism.
Just before moving on to the next post, I think I'll just say that neurodivergent Laura, who posted that, is a late diagnosed ADHD, autistic plus ADHD, and all the things. Former teacher, former learner, accidental activist and advocate, parent and partner of multiply neurodivergent children, just trying to keep it together while everything is falling apart. And for the next post, this post is by A Cup Full of Spoons. And there's a graphic image with a light blue background and a little cartoon of a brain lifting a very heavy barbell full of weights. I'll say that again. The next post is by A Cup Full of Spoons, and it's a graphic with a cartoon brain lifting a very heavy barbell of weights. As someone who no longer works a traditional job due to severe burnout, disability, and chronic illness, I hate when people I've just met ask, "What do you do for a living?" The next time this happens, I'm going to tell them that I fight for my life and see how they respond. What are your thoughts? I'll tell you about the poster, A Cup Full of Spoons. They're a health and wellness website writer. They share informative and relatable content on their own lived experiences with chronic illness and disability, neurodivergence, and mental health. And they also share a special interest. They also share special interest content and poetry / art. So I think maybe this statement, the next time this happens, I'm going to tell them I fight for my life and see how they respond, is coming from a place of severe burnout from both their neurodivergence and their disability and their chronic illness, which seems like a lot of heavy weight to carry.
Yeah, it's like the question, what do you do for a living? We've discussed this before here. It's come up in most of our lives as, a way of defining people. But I'm reflecting on it here that this person's possibly, being asked this because they don't or seem not to be employed. Because that's often when folk will ask you this question. It's like, you seem to have a lot of spare time on your hands. I see you during the day. You're at home a lot. What do you do for a living? And this is possibly a person who was, I'm assuming, liked working and due to chronic illness is unable to. And so they're facing one of the biggest jobs now, the biggest tasks in life, which is to stay healthy and to stay alive.
That's a really beautiful way of putting it there, Ray. That our task is to stay healthy and to stay alive. in the post, it's drenched in shame. It's drenched in this feeling, this societal shame that so often we as autistic people share and experience. It's an epidemic, and it rears its head here in the employment idea that you feel judged even if people are not judging you, and the way that question is framed, what do you do for a living, like how do you contribute to the budget, the breadwinner idea, these kind of concepts that really are negative for us, when the reality is that the most important thing is looking after oneself in the here and now, right now, making sure that there's a health in that brain, as you say there, Ray. So we need to send out a message to say we do not need to feel this shame. We can move away from it. We need to find ways to deflect it away. When you feel the people around you might be suggesting these things, build some kind of toughen up against it, because it's not helpful for us.
You can also see how easy it would be to mask in this situation, like adopt an identity to deflect people's probing.
I agree wholeheartedly with what the poster says and what you're saying, Jules, about it. And I think it isn't necessary to have all three to be able to say this out loud. So the person is neurodivergent with ADHD. They have chronic illness and disability. You could have just one of those things. You could have none of those things and respond to a person asking you the very judgmental question, just let me ask, what do you do for a living? And as you get to our age, some of us here, we've got a lot of different friends maybe who are retired or retiring in that age range, and some of them are sort of retiring out loud in this sort of more superficial Facebook kind of way where, they're spending winters here and there or whatever it is they're doing. None of that's relevant. It's hard enough for people with autism to deal with small talk, and that very judgy kind of small talk questions. Just let me ask, what do you do for a living? Doesn't have a lot of place in the world, and certainly does lead to shame.
Here's a problem though, Teresa, and myself, answering myself earlier. Small talk includes a few basic questions, and they're all painful. Simple ways of classifying people as to who they are. Where are you from? Where did you grow up? Which school did you go to? Have you got any kids? What do you do for a living? Who your parents are? All these kind of questions, and all of them are horrible questions with different endings that we're all sensitive to. People who are childless and care about that, and being asked if they have any children as a routine. if they're in a relationship, when they're quite happy not being in a relationship and having that pushed on them as a routine. So there is also a little bit of what the fuck do we expect? These are the questions that are perpetually asked in every society in the world, and have been for millennia. So, to some extent, it's up to us to have the answer in how we feel about it.
You know how you say for millennia there? I was thinking as you said that, we probably weren't asking these questions because we already knew. We knew because we were in a community with people. We weren't estranged, we weren't alienated, we weren't disconnected. We knew what each other was doing. We were living with them. And that's why I focus on that word living in this inquiry. What do you do for a living? You know, and I put in the text there, are people really prepared to live with you? Or do they just want to mark you off and tick a few boxes and go, that's them sussed out?
You know, though, I fully agree with the sentiment that underlies your words there, Ray. But I also use these basic framework inquiries that go with our society, when getting to know people sometimes. Um, and if I don't, they volunteer all this information so that they volunteer whether to put them in the sheep, goats, or tiddlywinks category.
Yeah, I just sort of fear it leads to judgment.
That's exactly what it's intended for, to lead to judgment.
And probably half of us are judgmental and we're judging ourselves. Because the word judgmental on its own is not a bad word. It's just a way of feeling your way through anything. Like a scientist has to be judging whatever experiment they're working on. I know for sure I'm a judgmental person. I'm not judging other people. I'm just judging the world around me and even myself.
Maybe there's another word then, like pigeonholing or categorizing.
Yeah, I know the word judge. I know I'm splitting hairs, which is what I do with small talk. So maybe I'm just a bit triggered.
I think it's important to make that distinction between judgment as a judgment of level and judgment as making decisions about something, and getting some ideas. Um, but judgment isn't a final thing. Judgment is a series of judgments. It's something that leads you towards something. But to be judgmental is to jump on something quite quickly and make a bigoted decision. So there is a difference. But here there's an internalized judgment, an internalized negative judgment. The person here is saying that they hate it when they have to deal with that question, because they feel within that question is something that is criticizing them of their position at the moment. They are not working, and they feel that when people ask them what they do for a living, that the immediate response must be to them that that's a bad thing, that they are looking after themselves. But if you take me for instance, if I asked that question of the person, their response wouldn't be leading me to make a judgmental idea that they should be out there working and not be looking after their health. It would be an opening to a conversation about their health, about autism, about my similar experience to them, and about how it's hurt me. So there's an internalized judgment here that is the reaction to being asked this personal question.
Jules, would you actually ask that question of anyone? I think earlier you
No,
said you
no, I
do.
wouldn't.
You may,
I wouldn't, mate. No, I don't think I would. It's really rare, unless somebody is itching for you to ask the question. No, I don't think so. It's not my part of the thing, but I don't have a problem with people asking it.
what, they park outside your door in a Ferrari. What do you do for a living?
Yeah, sorry for over talking you there, mate. Got a bit too enthusiastic.
Just before moving on, I would say, well, if they were wearing a deer stalker and carrying a magnifying glass, I might. Okay. Moving on to the next post by the Autistic Advocate. Just being alive as a disabled person in this world is hard, all caps, especially when you're surrounded by stigma and that is soaked into your bones, shaping both your worldview and your self-view. This might be compounded because you may be multiply disabled or have intersections across different aspects of who you are that are more, less, or equally stigmatized dependent on what those intersections are. Then there is the fact that disabled people are forced into imperfect decisions and situations constantly, and we have no choice but to make or that we have no choice or to make. Sorry, I'm going to have to start that over. Then there is the fact that disabled people are forced into imperfect decisions and situations constantly that we have no choice but to make or be in. Often those contexts are dramatically life-changing. This brings massive and unavoidable stress and uncertainty. Those decisions and situations combined with that stigma often mean your levels of safety are dramatically reduced, which can be claustrophobic, confining, and deeply contributes to anxiety. For those of us with disabled children, there's an extra layer of this. Impossible systems, navigation through systems designed to be convoluted, complicated, inaccessible, and to create as many barriers as possible. Many of us now home educate, which brings a harsh mirror of experience and demand when normative pressures and future fears creep in, with the added loveliness of children with trauma from years of unmet needs thrown into the mix to add to our own. Those of us that unavoidably have kids in school are holding space for daily dysregulation or the intense holding together of things that you know will explode at some point, along with the constant cycle of hopes being dashed and promises being broken. We are also dealing with all of this with zero support from family, who often just provide rich levels of more demand, judgment, and expectations and extra work. Often with family members who put themselves at the center of the universe and assume all others orbit their needs. We're living against a backdrop of pandemics and war, suffering and heartache, and a constant wave of negative noise and assault from our governments, the media, a lot of professionals, even our neighbors. That just increasingly diminishes any form of safety you might have clawed back for yourself. Within this context, you are never, ever, ever, ever not going to drop a lot of balls. In fact, if any balls are caught at all, it's a miracle. Within this context, the idea that anyone wouldn't drop a ball is ridiculous and self-harming. Within all of this context, the idea that anyone wouldn't drop balls is a ridiculous and self-harming level of pressure to place on themselves. It's literally unachievable.
Hey. We don't have to do the whole of this in one thing.
Yes, I don't, sorry. I'm almost at the end, but I don't think I can. You're right. So my apologies.
That edit point you've got there is, it's literally unachievable. Let's work on it from there. What do we think about that?
Hang on. I know this is going to sound odd, and we might end up having to edit it out, but reading it I found difficult. It's a hard amount to read, not just in terms of the length of it, but the intensity of it. It made me realize something, though, that if I get this worked up, and I do, it can be a lot for other people. So it might take a minute for us to really understand it.
It reminded me of when I do journaling. Every day I write the book. That's an Elvis Costello song. Yeah, every day I write in my journal, and sometimes if I'm passionate about something, I really feel I've got something I need to get off my chest, I'll write and write and write, and I won't edit it. And what happens is I'll very quickly realise that I'm saying the same thing again. I'm not really going to get any further in communicating this sentiment or feeling or expression. I've done it, but I keep continuing, I keep trying because I keep feeling there's something more to say. And sometimes we have to edit a little bit, and maybe we're also a bit tired too today, so a lengthy post can be a wee bit TLDR, as they say in the parlance, and we switch off a little bit. Our energy isn't quite up for it.
I'd like to tell you a little more about the Autistic Advocate, the author of the page. Kieran Rose is an autistic consultant, academic, researcher, author, trainer, and international speaker. So to me, I would say that they're really trying to express something in as no, I'm lost. We're gonna have to edit that out.
Yeah, don't you do? That's fine. Teresa, I would say that this is typical Kieran Rose, because where Kieran Rose is best is in front of an audience, being a narrator, and where most effective is where that passion comes through. And what we have is a building up, to a crescendo that you whip up a crowd, a rabble raising. It's repetitive and it builds on a theme, and it builds to say how more and more these things layering upon each other, these looking after autistic kids, being autistic yourself, all these things layering on, and then the release at the end of it is when he says that we should stop berating ourselves and stop the inner voice criticizing ourselves. So I think perhaps what really needed to be done is the piece needed to be adapted to the format. But as people are saying in the text, it is a thoughtful piece. And it kind of goes with what we talked about earlier about the shame that we put upon ourselves, the internalization of things. And internalized ableism is what people put as a phrase to go with this.
Perhaps I wasn't able, in the context of a Facebook post read aloud on a podcast, to be able to do it justice. I'd like to go back and read it, and perhaps if this makes it into the edit, a listener might like to go back and read it with that in mind. The next post is highly visual. It's by, oops. The next post is by Jordan James, the autistic photographer. It's a series of 7 beautiful, relaxing landscape photographs from New Zealand. Jordan James says, I haven't been posting that much anymore due to AI and politics taking over social media. All I ever wanted to do was share my photography and life experiences as a neurodivergent individual, and it seems like that's not enough anymore, as the algorithm no longer lets me reach anyone. With over 100,000 followers, I reach only 3% on a good day. I'll never stop posting. Often it's a release to help my mental health, but it's just so sad that not all people that love my art get to see it. Hashtag top fans. And the photographs are absolutely stunning. Lots of water, mountains. Yeah, just something. And I think if you don't follow Jordan James, the autistic photographer, you should try just to visit his page, since you might not being reached in the algorithms, as he has pointed out. He or she. Thoughts?
Google Maps, you can sometimes see images that people put up from their Google accounts. So this idea of reaching people with your art, your photography, and the algorithm, I think we've been playing these games for a while now with the internet, social media. It promised so much. It gave it to us at times. There was a time when we felt it was going to be the great global village of contact. But now it's become just like an oversaturated high street. So, but if you look into the little nooks and crannies of the beast, you can still display things and make contact. And I've noticed this with Google Images sometimes. But I don't know how you maybe get your images onto a click away as you're browsing a street or a town or a country on Google Maps.
Yeah, I think the interesting thing for me there is that for some time there was a bit of a spike in interest in autism, which meant um, the algorithm favoured a little content that. Oh, sorry, something's gone wrong. Sorry about that.
Is it the hashtags that are working with the algorithm or not? I always thought it wasn't that.
Well, there are various parts to it, but autism itself has gone through its flavour of the month, I think we're saying. Somebody with that amount of reach um, not getting impressions from his posts when they're engaging posts as well, because their photography really shows that all the discussions are elsewhere about other things. And that is a big change. You cannot use autism or autistic to get yourself attention on the internet, particularly. People have to find niches.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I think we're back to that word judgment again. What is the judgment that creates visibility or attention or being seen?
Yeah, that is too bad. Because I can see that a lot of not just talent, but hard work is going into Jordan James' Facebook page. So hopefully his followers realize they haven't seen him in a while and seek him out on whatever platform he's on.
Yeah, he does have a groovy podcast. We're kind of getting near the hour now, aren't we?
Yes. I'd like to thank Harry for giving me the opportunity to read these posts, and to everybody here for tolerating my reading of them today. Harry will be back next week for the 555 and Harry's Facebook.
And the change in the clocks.
Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, Ray, for sitting in for Harry while he was away this weekend. And I'm sure he's going to be absolutely delighted to read the discussions and comments. We'll be back with a 555 and Harry next week. Cheers now.